Last week's discussion on making the sign of the cross, like the Orthodox do or the Eastern churches do, led to a question about Eastern churches and the Orthodox Church and what happened with that particular split and so on. What we have to recognize is that as the church spread, it primarily spread in the Middle East and then to the northern part of Africa and then into Rome and then from Rome to the outlying areas. But in the Roman Empire in the West, Latin was the primary language that was spoken, whereas in the East, it could have been Hebrew or Syriac or one of the languages that was pertinent to the East. And at one time, we could talk about all the Christian churches. There were not the various denominations at all, but all the Christian churches that were one. They were united in the same creed, which we have from the Nicene Creed, and in addition, a couple of additions from what is called the Constantinople Nicene Creed. And all accepted that creed in both the East and the Western churches. But politically, the empire was split at one time between the East and the West. Constantine brought them back together, but at times there were just these cultural differences and some differences of opinion about governance and so on. And it came to a head in 1054 when the Bishop of Constantinople excommunicated the Roman bishop, and the Roman bishop excommunicated the Eastern bishops. And that led to the split, as we know it today, between Roman Catholics and the Orthodox. But Roman Catholics and Orthodox still have the same creed. We still celebrate the 7 sacraments. The only real difference between the two is a theological discussion around where the Spirit progresses from the Father and Son or directly from the Father. And it's a theological question. Again, we're not going to delve into that, but that was one of the things that separated East from West. And then also a recognition of the Bishop of Rome, who we consider as the Pope, the successor of St. Peter. Whereas the governance in the Eastern always had primarily, at the beginning, 4 major bishops, one in Constantinople, one in Jerusalem, one in Alexandria, and one in Antioch. And so they were considered to be a group of bishops that held authority, and eventually the Bishop of Constantinople became the one who convened all of the other bishops. He was considered a bishop who was equal to all the others and yet was like the chairman of the board in a sense, and he was the one that would convene the other bishops. In the West, we always recognize that the Pope was the primary authority over all bishops. So there was a distinction in that regard too, through a lot of various political as well as cultural differences that occurred, not only these theological differences, but because of those there came to be a separation, which was aggravated by the Crusades, which eventually even attacked Constantinople. And of course that drove the East even further apart as they were trying to repair this division. Now, along the way, some of the Eastern churches joined the Pope in the Roman Church and therefore are in union with the Roman Catholic Church, but they still have their own particular practices, not in terms of doctrine, which is the same, but just, for instance, their liturgy is in the Byzantine language, or it might be in the language of Antioch, the Syriac language. So they might be in their own languages, and there are slight differences in the way in which liturgy is celebrated, along with some of its law practices are somewhat different. But they are in union. They're called uniate churches. They are in union with Rome, and so churches like the Greek Catholic and the Ruthenian Catholic, Maronites who are in our area, and Armenian Catholics. Those are all churches that eventually join with Rome. Now, the Orthodox churches remain separated from the Roman Catholic Church, but Paul VI in the 1970s, along with Athenagoras of the East, they lifted that excommunication. And in fact, we would say that if we were traveling, for instance, in the East, let's say we were traveling in Russia, it was a Sunday, we couldn't find a Roman Catholic church, it's permissible for us to go to an Orthodox church. Now, the Orthodox don't always accept that in kind, but we have in our Roman Catholic Church. We also recognize that we could be anointed by a priest of the Orthodox Church if there was a situation in which we needed that in a foreign country. So there are some movement towards that union, and every single pope, along with every single patriarch of the Orthodox Church, have been trying to repair as much as possible the division. In fact, they have come to an acceptance of that little filioque clause, honoring both ways in which that's expressed in our creed. So there is a movement in that direction. Somebody asked how many of the churches there are. The Eastern Catholic churches, there's about 23 different rites within the Eastern Catholic churches. In the Orthodox churches, there are too many that I wasn't even counting at all. But there's way more than 23 of those Orthodox churches. And once again, we recognize that in the East, they would see that the Bishop of Constantinople, the present-day capital of Turkey, would be the head patriarch, and he would gather others together whenever they needed to discuss church matters on a level of all the bishops that are gathered. So hopefully that clears up that distinction, and we want to pray that our Eastern brothers and sisters of both those who are Unionate and those that are Orthodox, will be able to come and be united together one day. That's a prayer that we can continue to pray.